Hi, so I want to talk about how I got 99.95 and how you might be able to improve on what I did. So first, you might think that's very strange. How can you get higher than the maximum 99.95? Well, so for example, you could get full marks in everything. I didn't get full marks in my subjects, but that's not what I want to focus on, okay? I want to focus on how you could do better from an educational standpoint, okay? And how the journey could be more meaningful to you and not just about, say, for example, like how much of it is just grinding. Okay, the grinding aspect isn't very educational, and you can definitely try to optimize to remove a lot of those things. Okay, there's definitely too much to be talking about here in like one go, so I might even jot down some points, and if people are interested, I can expand on those. And I guess I want to make a record of these things, so I guess I don't have to also explain the same thing over and over again. Okay. All right. So how did I get 91? So maybe I can tell you first about what subjects I did. Subjects. Um, Talk about sort of my approach. And I think one interesting thing about the approach is it's probably not that common actually, and also um, you might you might wonder if it's even possible to have that kind of approach these days. So I did my HSC actually quite a while ago, um, but still not too long ago. I mean, and um, yeah, and if some of those things might sound like they don't actually help me achieve a high ATAR, but actually they're surprisingly very helpful. What else can I talk about? So I can maybe give you some advice, and and then I'll have some miscellaneous other topics that we maybe can expand on later. Okay. So for subjects, um, I had 3 unit English, so English extension one, but I dropped the English extension one, and then I had um, extension two maths, physics, and chemistry. So it's kind of funny. This was known as the Asian combo um, when I was in high school. I guess probably because a lot of um, Asian students chose the same thing, but I mean the reality is there's not really anything else to choose. So actually, there's a lot of sort of subjects which sound nice in the HSC. They have a nice name. You might consider doing it like business studies or maybe economics, but I think um, there's a lot of definitely a lot of diversity in subjects, but not a lot of depth. Okay. Oh, I also did like IPT, which like as accelerated year 10 HSC, but yeah, this was a very horrible subject. And the only thing that was good about it was the teacher was um our teacher Mr. Copping was quite nice to us. He also was himself very into gaming, which we're all into at the time. And okay, sorry, this is going a bit slow, but I think I'm not really um you know the super high energy intense right now. And so as far as the subject overview, um so I ranked first in my school, so I went to Normanhurst Boys, and I guess that's another topic we could talk about more. So how does school affect ATAR? If you're interested in that, I could definitely make another discussion. How does school affect ATAR, or how are your school marks and HSC marks um, calculated? Okay, that's definitely a topic we can go into. So I was Ducks of Norma, got So I can't quite remember the exact marks, but I can go into it if you want. But basically, I some in terms of ATAR contribution, I basically maximum had the maximum ATAR contribution from all 4 units of maths and physics. Um, and I think I lost if there was room to improve in terms of marks, it would definitely be in terms of chemistry and English, where um so internally I guess I was ranked first in everything except for English. And in English I was ranked like third or something like this. And in the actual HSC exam, I think I actually did better than I think I did better than my rank in the actual HSC exam, but I did worse than my rank in the chemistry exam. So so I didn't get perfect scores and everything. I'm pretty sure I definitely lost like 1 mark in English in Maths Extension 1 in the HSC exam, and I didn't remember losing any marks in Extension 2, but I must have given sort of how things turned out. And physics, I think I explicitly lost like 3 marks because essentially that was how the state rankings worked. Because so someone might not have lost 1 mark, and I couldn't have lost more than 3 marks. So I think I got like equal third in terms of marks, and yeah, so and those things contributed to a 99.95. Okay, okay, so maybe I should have led with this. This is a bit more interesting, but the approach that might surprise you is I didn't have any tutoring for any of these subjects, except I actually had a little bit of tutoring for maths. Um, except I had an extension to maths for like a term also for I didn't have tutoring for any of the subjects at all except for maths. And for maths I only did it I didn't do it for the whole like HSC. I only did it for a little while, and then actually I was kind of disappointed because my tutor said, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I have students who need my attention more urgently." Okay, and I guess that's maybe like a general complaint I have about the education system. Um, just because someone's doing well, doesn't mean they'll be fine in terms of reaching their potential or achieving their goals. So I think we should be more considerate of that when educating students. And so I think he basically taught me the Cambridge textbook a bit earlier than I learned it in school, but it was only for a short while, and then we stopped. So maybe in this category, another question that can be answered is sort of so how much help um from other people one gets to do this in this process. And anytime you want to do something kind of extreme, you're gonna want help from other people. It's usually a team effort. Like it's in some sense it's you don't want to waste resources, right? Um so for example, my parents were a really big deal um in their support, and I wouldn't have realized that. If you asked me this question like just as I finished high school, I probably wouldn't have even mentioned it, but as time goes on, you kind of think back and realize how much they helped in the background or even like very directly, and you might not even notice because they're just generally so helpful. Okay, so parents and all kind of things they can do. So basically, success is usually a team effort. Okay, even if you don't realize it at the time. Okay, and so no tutoring. So it doesn't mean I didn't have any help, and it doesn't mean I didn't put the work in either. Okay, but there's a lot of things here that I can write that make it sound like that. Okay, so for example, I did not study for any exams before year 12. So that's maybe sound pretty interesting. So what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? So for example, you know, we had a maths test every term um, at school, and put I didn't do any extra when there was an exam. Like in the time, like I didn't treat the days before the exam any differently than any other days of the week. So for the like 5 years leading up to the HSC, I did my maths homework, but I didn't do any past papers, and I didn't do any exam preparation, and sometimes I didn't even know the exam was on, so it was kind of surprised me when I just did it. And so I think so when you first hear it, that's kind of shocking. It might sound like I just started preparing for the HSC in my very last year of school, and I didn't do anything before that. But that's not quite true at all. So so but while I didn't prepare for the exam, well, I should probably tell you I actually didn't fail these exams either. I mean, for maths, I think um, I got pretty close to 100% in all of my exams before year 12, and except with one exception, I think I bombed this extension one maths exam, like either the yearly or the half yearly at the end of year 11. Um, and I mean that was a little bit of a wake up call because there wasn't that many marks. So if you like got one question wrong, it was like 10% of the score, and there was one question. Um, so I usually relied on trying to figure out how to do the questions in the exam, and there was one question that I just thought um, I should be able to get, but I just for some reason I couldn't quite get to the end. It must have been some kind of calculation error or something, or um, I made some wrong approach. But yeah, and I didn't do well in that one exam. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not really about doing well in exams. So I mean, none of those exams, their marks didn't count for basically anything. I mean, they count for like awards night where you'll get awarded like first in the year for that year or something. Um, and and um, but that's really it. It doesn't count towards your HSC. I think it's kind of amazing. Some parents telling me they think the um the scores they get the students get in year 8 count towards the HSC. I mean, in some schools, like Maths Extension 2 for some reason isn't offered to all the students or they don't have enough classes, so your rank determines if you get in. But I feel like if you're on the borderline to get in, it's already a very dire situation in the first place. Another thing I want to mention is so while I didn't study for the exams, like when I went to the classes and I did my homework, I didn't waste time, I didn't, like I didn't do something else and not pay attention. I didn't skip the homework. I tried to learn the subjects sort of for understanding. I tried to understand as much as possible, and it meant a great deal to me to understand those things. So in some ways, I prepared as the best I could for year 12 because all the previous things I understood them thoroughly as opposed to sort of just cramming hacks and tricks for an exam. Okay. Um, yeah, and I think a lot of this maybe so did not lose any sleep during year 12. Okay. And this might surprise some people. Um, I mean, it's not all. It's sometimes it's I just didn't really have a lot going on. Okay, so I really, you know, I dedicated myself in year 12 to achieve as high a score the HSC as possible. So, and that meant sacrificing a lot of things. Like I used to play Counter-Strike, which we were actually pretty good at Counter-Strike. There used to be like this competition called SGL, and we'd all take our computers there. There's also always lots of drama, and then we would compete, and we had all these like clan wars and stuff like this. It's kind of funny. But and if I was to lose sleep, it's probably I wouldn't really lose sleep. I just kind of shift my schedule on the weekends, but I'd be staying up playing like games like StarCraft and all this kind of stuff. Um, but I gave up those things in year 12, and so there was nothing really for me to lose any sleep on, and obviously I never crammed for exams, beyond just kind of doing what I thought was necessary. Um, and then a lot of it is so it's not that I did less work. It's just that because you have such a predictable schedule, you can basically move your routine, um, and do the work consistently enough that you shouldn't lose any sleep. It should just all be part of your daily routine. Um, so this is kind of um, yeah. So this is kind of it goes in with I guess the commitment, to set that as your result. I also remember I wrote 100 on my on like a little windowsill part of my room, so that when I woke up I would see that number, and I was trying to get 100%, um in all the subjects, and actually I was actually disappointed when I saw I didn't get 100% of those subjects, but I think that's maybe one of the advantages of setting, so maybe it was setting a high goal, a more ambitious goal, is that you're less likely to achieve it, so you're more likely to be unhappy. Okay, but you're you'll ultimately be better off. So it's kind of like, you score. I scored higher than I would have if I set a lower goal, but um I I was obviously disappointed not to achieve it. Um, but yeah, so I had this commitment. Okay, so maybe all these things actually, some of these things sound like I'm not working hard. So maybe something I need to write something that makes it sound like I am working hard. So, what about, so when the trials were over, okay, I didn't break my schedule. Okay, so I didn't actually take a day off to, party or whatever. I never really went to any parties except for like our like after party of formal or something when we were in high school. But I mean, it's quite natural, I think, once the trials are over, because you have like a pretty long time before the HSCs actually start, um, to just kind of take a break, and do other things. But I guess when I was in that age, I didn't view it as like a, because if you do something, it's like you do something intense, you take a break. Like that was something that maybe you might do like across a more like a longer lifespan where lots of these kind of goals repeat. Whereas I felt that, um, I was trying to achieve something significant, and this was like a very one-off kind of situation. So it wouldn't be too extreme to just continue my routine until the end of the HSC, and then if I really wanted to celebrate, I could do it when it's over. So it's kind of like that Kobe thing where it's like the job's not done, right? The job isn't done. So when the trials and everything finished, I'd secured my rankings. But but once if I explain to you how the rankings and stuff affect ATAR, you'll know that, you actually you could still get like basically like very low marks in the in the end. And so it wasn't, it certainly wasn't any cause for celebration yet. All right, what else do we have? So that was like, sort of some examples to give you an idea of my approach. And I should also mention, so this is maybe where the advice might stem from. So maybe a lot of this approach stuff is coming with advice already. But um, you know, when yeah, so when we started year 12, it's funny, I dropped English Extension 1, even though it was my higher subject, marked subject, and I took physics, which was my lowest subject. And I even met the principal because the principal was like, "Why are you dropping your highest mark and kind of keeping your lowest mark?" And I was like, "Well, because I understand." Um, so let's go for understanding. So some of these are actually like advice instead of approach, but we should maybe put them in one dot point. Okay, so go for understanding. I didn't understand how I did well in English Extension 1. Like, I'm not a good student in terms of English, and it's always been a struggle for me. But physics, I kind of knew why I did not as well. And um, I just thought if I'd kind of fixed my sort of lack of preparation for exams and stuff like this, I would end up doing well in physics. And my impression was no matter how hard I tried for extension one, I wouldn't I wouldn't be able to rely on getting high marks as I didn't understand what was getting high marks and what wasn't. So, and it turned out to be the case. I mean, I got a state ranking for physics, and then, but who knows what I got for English? But English advanced. So I spent an inordinate amount of time. So on English, okay. So English, maybe that could be like another question. It's like English. Um, so I was lucky to have good English teachers at school. The whole department seemed to be really into it. I think even one of the teachers came first in the state, and that was um, quite exciting for them. And then everyone's like, there was always a very lively discussion in each English class, and so it was quite enjoyable to spend a lot of effort on English. So I was like in the bottom English class at the start of school, and I kind of crept up one class per year until I was in the top English class, close to year 12. And and I was certainly close to the bottom of the top English class. And then finally, I think in year 12, there's not even really different. Like, I'm not sure if they do the classes in terms of ability. I guess it might depend on who takes English extension and stuff, but I certainly didn't do extension anymore, so I don't know if that affected me much. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, um, I started very low, and I was pretty insecure about my English ability because I did pretty bad on the English selective test, and I couldn't even speak English until like I was in year 2 or 3. So, but yeah, so I spent a lot of effort on English. It was almost like I put all the other subjects kind of in the background compared to English. So English was like a fifth of all my subjects, the 2 units, but I spent probably 5 times more time on English than um than um than any of the other subjects. So to give you an example, um, so we would rent like we rented videos back then. Okay, so we rent like or DVDs. I can't remember which one, but like we went to Video Easy, or maybe it was like Blockbuster Video, but they had that kind of stuff, and it was like we would rent like three or four movies just just so I could watch them and analyze them in the way like like the camera techniques and all this crap. Um, which it could have been just an excuse for wanting to watch movies. I don't know. Like, that was definitely the case, but um, so having done that, um, so one of the good things that came out of it in terms of English is you have to pick all these additional texts. And I had like a lot of movies to choose from. So over that year, I would have watched like more than 300 movies. So and I guess you're kind of surprised because when you don't watch many movies, you tend to only go for like the really like the clickbait kind of things that really hook you. But then if you're watching a lot of movies, you end up just watching whatever. And I think it's sometimes very surprising to watch a movie you never like even wanted to watch. And so it kind of gives you an interesting idea that you never thought about, or um, it was very interesting in its own way, and you would have never really noticed that if you were just going for your usual genre of movies. And yeah, and this was like the first, and I really disliked watching movies more than once. So so the text that we chose, obviously, you watch it a lot to memorize some of the things, and um, and I didn't really like doing that, but I did it to sort of um to optimize my English performance. Okay, yeah, so maybe I'll stop there for the approach and start doing the advice because so maybe the advice can just go with sort of how you could improve on what I did. Okay. Okay, one last thing is so obviously I was doing past papers. Okay, so past papers, I don't know how common it was back then, but my mom would get me all these past papers from trial and from all these schools and HSC, and I would basically just um do them consistently over time. Okay, so actually I had this bucket of all my past like essays and past papers, and it basically it could feel like a like I don't know one of those travel boxes. Maybe I don't know. It's almost like maybe I'm exaggerating because can't remember very well, but it's like maybe like a good two full like international travel suitcases full of just like past papers and stuff. Okay, and so okay, so let's just say that's how I did it for now. There's lots of other things that you maybe ask about and I can expand on, but um, so what was wrong with what I did? Okay, so what was wrong with the things that I did? Especially like how can they even be wrong if I ended up getting 99.95? Okay, and the key here lies on sort of educational value. Okay, so for example, like if so when I did an English speech, I memorized it. Okay, I memorized it um so that I wouldn't have to read notes and I could make eye contact the whole time. And I got full marks in all my English speeches. And and the question is how much was that worth doing? Okay. So for that particular example, I think it was worth doing because so while the short term marks I did get those, um, I also benefited a lot just from general kind of public speaking situations. So ever since high school, I would never need like I would essentially never need to prepare for a speech, even and I wasn't really scared of public speaking anymore. So I could generally improvise, even to quite large audiences. Um, so when I was doing mathematics, I would give lectures or um, give talks at conferences with basically no notes or preparation, and it didn't um, and it didn't do me any disservice. So I think it made the talks better. So so there's definitely things to be said about um, doing things um, sort of wholeheartedly and having sort of unexpected good things come from them, even if you didn't think they would. So there's definitely lots of those things, and I guess this is why like certain subjects are compulsory because a lot of people don't really make the best choices when it comes to their own education. Um, though I still wouldn't. Um, yeah, I guess at this stage, I don't think English should be compulsory. I don't think any subject should be compulsory. Um, though I'm not sure. See, I still like if it wasn't compulsory, would I have chosen like biology or something? Maybe I would have instead of English. But that would have been purely based on um the strength of the subjects. And I guess I truly would have missed out on some valuable learning, especially because I had such a great opportunity with the teachers that I had for English. Okay, so um yeah, I guess um yeah, so if English wasn't compulsory, I might not have done it, and I felt like I might have been worse off. Okay, but I still believe I don't really believe in compulsion, you know. I guess forcing people to do things. And of course, you know, when people aren't, maths is not compulsory, they choose not to do maths, which makes the situation much worse. But I think people should be advised to do maths even if it's not compulsory. Okay. Okay, but that's a subject for another talk. Um, so okay, and then by far, sort of the most obvious time is the grinding on the past papers. Okay, well, so how did that benefit me, and how did that maybe harm my education? Well, so a lot of the exams, I mean, they were challenging because it was not that easy to solve the last question in some of those math papers sometimes, and so that would serve as sort of like a almost like a lesson every time you did the exam. But the problem was a lot of it was a waste of time. Like pretty much 90% of the exam was just writing trivial answers to things and checking that they were right and managing your time, which you know they're all necessary skills, but you know as with necessary skills, they they deserve a certain proportion of your time and not any more. Okay, and so it would have been nice to cut out a lot of that and just focus on doing the difficult problem and um and trying to learn from that and maybe even just learning some more subjects. Um, but unfortunately, it's the non-educational grinding that has the biggest impact on your score um, towards very close to the exam because I mean it's one thing to have a chance to get all the questions right. It's another thing to sort of guarantee it. And if you've seen the questions before, then obviously it's much easier to do, just kind of like memorizing your speech. Yeah, so we actually had an English exam once where you got to memorize, we got the question the day before, so you could literally write your answer and memorize it. And so a lot of this effort, well, they definitely contribute to your marks. They don't really contribute to your education unless you're not so sure if you're even capable of doing such a thing. So for a lot of these things, if you're doing it for the first time, you get to understand yourself and what you're capable of, and it gives you a bit of confidence for the future. So that is quite interesting. Um, and I guess, and then I guess ultimately, you know, a lot of the subjects that we did in the curriculum, um, it wasn't that it wasn't challenging. Like it was not. I don't think it was at the right depth. So I would have loved to have done like maths Olympiads or something in year 12. Or for the possibility of maybe like, you know, extension 6 or extension 8 maths. Just kind of to really understand um how much more there was out there. I wanted to be a physicist when I was in year 12, and I had no idea that the physics course wasn't even really it was essentially um not even mathematical. So um and I didn't think maths was a subject that that could be done on its own. Like I thought it had to just be used for other things. But only when I went to uni did I realize that maths was intrinsically interesting. Um, okay, so what else? Yeah, so it would have been nice to have something to strive for. But I guess this did quite well for me. I mean, I didn't understand all the things I studied in year 12, and I guess, but it was kind of suited for me in the sense that like the sort of naive answer that I had to the questions based on my limited understanding was actually the accepted answer. Um, for the actual exams because I'm sure there were some students who were much more advanced and intellectual in high school who would have struggled much more in the problems just because they had considered something that wasn't in the exam, that kind of went beyond the question, and the question really wasn't prepared for it. And so that risked them losing a lot of time and effort and getting the same or even less marks depending on how people marked it and stuff. Um, yeah, okay. So yeah, so I guess that's kind of my advice. Maybe like um, so it's so we need to take an educational approach to getting um the maximum ATAR. And also, I didn't actually need this ATAR to get into any course. I didn't do medicine or law or anything. I just wanted to get this ATAR because I was under the impression that everyone was trying to do this and that um you know it's the last thing I had to do for high school, and I might as well make my parents proud or whatever. Um, and also to make myself proud, or at least have the confidence that I could achieve something like that. So I didn't do it to actually use it for anything. Um, I just did it sort of for my own personal satisfaction. It turns out, I mean, so despite what people say about having a high ATAR, I think it is still pretty useful. Um, it does, it doesn't change in the future, so you can sort of reflect on that and have that confidence. And um, I guess it's also something other people can relate to. So, I've got a few achievements over the years that I was proud of, but basically um, could not explain uh, what the nature of those things were to other people. But with something like this is kind of like a common experience to a lot of people. It can give us sort of common ground to relate to things. And yeah, so I guess that's maybe the start of a really long conversation. Yeah, so a lot of our year 12s just finishing trials, so about to undergo this HSC exam, and that's changed quite a bit. Um, and I think Yeah, and I think one of the problems with the program for a lot of the students, especially our students, is that the exams are essentially too easy. So it's not that they're getting full marks, but it's that the questions aren't um, sort of testing whether they can do it or not, and then ranking the people according to whether they can actually have mastered the concept. It's more about managing the time and minimizing your errors. It's almost like a sport, ironically, even though we kind of treat maths competitions and other competitions separately. And this is the major considerations of these things are more sport-like than academic. All right. What else? Yeah. Maybe you've already fallen asleep to my voice by now. Um, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I could talk about. Talk about exactly how my marks ranks works for the subjects. Um, I guess I also want to say these things before I forget them. It's been quite a while now. But yeah. So maybe another topic is sort of what happened after the HSC. The marks, ranks, and any sort of stuff. Oh, I also remember actually one thing. Maybe I'll finish on this. So I also remembered that at the end of year 11, like at the awards night, I got like was it like first in advanced maths or something, and pretty much like no other awards. Um, or was it? I got one award for maths and nothing else. And I think someone came up and said to me that um, so it was regarding basically the people who did get the awards that I would never outrank them in the subjects. It was like someone basically told me like pretty funny like it's like my ceiling has already been reached. I would never exceed like my rank is already too good for me. I will never exceed those ranks of the other students. And I always remember that because like the fact is when you're doing these exams, like while people compare the marks with the other people and stuff, like no one can even affect you in the exam. Like you don't, they don't have like you have total control over your exam. So I thought what he was saying was quite ridiculous because like I just felt like at worst I would come equal first because if I got 100% in every exam, then there's no way that anyone could beat me, let alone like have this kind of thing over me. So I really believed what he said was quite ridiculous, and I guess I had to actually, but I had to show him. Um, but another thing is, yeah. So like it goes back to what I was saying. Like when you're doing it's like it's your personal benefit because you know probably like maybe not even a month after this happened, right? Like after the HSC finished, the guy probably doesn't even remember ever even saying that or even registering that he had said that and he was wrong or something like that. Um, because naturally, why would he care? Like he probably didn't even say it seriously. Like it kind of, in some sense, he probably didn't even care about what he said as much as I did because it was concerning me. And the reality, and that's kind of the reality with this kind of thing. Like, so if you do it to prove to other people that you're worth something, like those people, um, will probably forget that you did, especially if they're not like close acquaintances. They'll probably just forget that you did that anyway. So, or um, yeah. So their reaction, I guess, isn't really worth the effort if that's what you're going for. And I think ultimately, in the long run, you're the one that you have to live with yourself. Um, sort of how you conceive yourself with those with those events is ultimately what really matters. And um, yeah, I mean, in the future you might get to meet new people, and this could be something that'll help you get over the line, like in like a job interview or something. But um, and that'll give you like a good starting point. Maybe I don't know if it can be considered of equal value to good looks. Maybe good looks is still somehow um still more impactful. But um you can give a good first impression to people that otherwise wouldn't know you in these kind of professional situations. Um, but yeah. So so I guess I talked a lot about how I did it and not as much about how to improve, but um I guess yeah, just kind of laying it out there, sort of the the plan for improvement kind of seems to be unfolding by itself, right? Um so so I wouldn't necessarily, make certain choices because I miss out on some of these unexpected um educational opportunities. But I would definitely emphasize less sort of the grinding aspects of it. And I did not enjoy a routine. I'm not a routine person, but once you got used to it, you kind of just got used to it. Um, and I, r- I really would have liked to spend maybe a greater proportion of high school, not just year 12, kind of just maybe getting a better understanding of what maths was all about, having a better idea of what direction I might be headed once I finished high school. And yeah, like you know how like people say they're passionate about medicine or they're passionate about something, and that's sort of their interview about getting into medicine and all this stuff. But the reality is you can't really be passionate about something which you've never even done before. So the people who do medicine the first time, once they get into the medical degree, having said they were passionate about medicine, it's really quite a hoax, right? Because like passionate really means like you're kind of volunteering at hospitals or whatever. Like you're surrounded by medical situations all the time. You're like looking up the I don't know the Stack Exchange equivalent of like medical forums, and you're kind of like really into it like that. Even though you might not know how to actually go about it, you at least have some actual exposure. And maybe that's the kind of thing that I would have wanted to have with mathematics and like to do more like maths competitions, maths Olympiads, to have this kind of exposure when I was younger. Um, but yeah, um, I guess yeah, ultimately had a very kind of carefree, which might not be a bad thing because you're not really ready to do so like a lot of things. Um, I definitely developed very slowly. Um, so I played a lot of games. Probably would have um there was some games that I really enjoyed, so and I did get something out of it, but I guess I played them more like sports than really as games. I probably would have liked to participate a bit more in sport. Though if I got into basketball when I was young, it might be a bit obsessive, so I don't know. Okay, so there's lots of topics here we could get into next time, but I'm starting to rant, so maybe got to cut this off. Um, yeah, so I do have a lot of opinions on tutoring. So if this um so I have maybe another video for tutoring. Let's see, where's tutoring? So tutoring, it can be like to not just help from other people, but like what is tutoring? And sort of what is this education business that I'm in now? Yeah, I should probably also tell people that I made this book, kind of reviewing HSC maths after I became a mathematician. Um, it's about to finish printing like basically this week. So I have essentially a HSC maths book. Tell people more about that. Um, yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that are interesting even after the HSC, but you got to start somewhere. All right. Well, if you made it this far, that's actually you couldn't have made it this far. It's pretty ridiculous. You're probably asleep by now, right? Um, my wife says my voice is good sound to fall asleep to. But yeah, so all right. So enjoy the rest of your day. If you want, you can like and subscribe.